What's more perfect than exploring new cultures while soaking up the sun and dipping your toes in turquoise waters? Doing these things with your family and, of course, your brothers and sisters from Wisdom for the Blind. Wisdom for the Blind is pleased to announce its first Caribbean Forum to be held on board Royal Caribbean's Harmony of the Seas. This dreamy vacation will be filled with thrilling experiences such as surfing, rock climbing, and even an electrifying 10-story plunge in the tallest slide at sea. This is not your average family getaway. There's fun and entertainment for all ages, but you'll also have learning workshops in technology and medical breakthroughs focused on the blind and vision impaired. We will sail from beautiful Miami on October 15th, 2023, visiting fabulous ports: Rotan in Honduras, Costa Maya and Cozumel in Mexico, and Royal Caribbean's private island, Coco Cay in the Bahamas. Add 2 spectacular days at sea, and while connecting with people that may experience the same challenges you do, you'll find unforgettable activities, make lasting memories, and soar to new heights. You'll learn about fascinating cultures and customs while tasting local delicacies and lounging in luxury. Wisdom for the Blind has also partnered with Operation Song, so you can have the opportunity to tell your service stories through songwriting. All of this and more starts at just $602 per person, based on double occupancy plus taxes and fees of $168. So what are you waiting for? Pack up your stuff, gather the crew, and head out on the open seas. You and your family will be talking about it for many years to come. Don't miss this great opportunity. Go to w4tb.org and find the button that says Caribbean Forum, or email us at forum@w4tb.org and book now. Space is limited. Don't forget to share the wisdom and tell a friend. You're listening to W4TB Radio from the Wisdom for the Blind Studios in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where we share some wisdom to help you navigate the seas to stay in calm waters. Please visit us on the web at w4tb.org or drop us an email at feedback@w4tb.org. You can also download the W4TB radio app at the Apple Store or Google Play. Please share the knowledge and tell a friend. Now, back to the show. The United States Department of Veterans Affairs is a cabinet-level executive branch department of the federal government, charged with providing lifelong health care services to eligible military veterans at the 170 VA medical centers in the United States. And that's where we come in. Live from the Wisdom for the Blind Studios in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, this is InSight to the VA. The VA is there to help us. Let's get started. Welcome to InSight to the VA. InSight to the VA. With your host, Douglas Cram.
Thanks, Keith, for that introduction. Welcome to InSight to the VA. We are speaking today with Leslie Dickson. Leslie is a manual skills instructor at the Biloxi Blind Rehab Center. She is also a co-host on a podcast called Hands on Safety. Leslie, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Doug, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How was your day?
It was busy, but good.
We're going to start out with some basic questions. Where were you born and where did you go to high school?
So I was born not too far away in Mobile, Alabama, and I went to high school at Baker High School because they had a regional school for the deaf and blind located within the high school. So I was able to take advantage of their services and go to mainstream classes, but also get assistance with large print and other resources.
I'd like to talk about Coloboma. Are you okay with talking about that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. what is coloboma?
Coloboma is a defect of the eye, and it actually means, in Greek, I believe, that it means mutilation. It is, in my case, where the eye does not grow all the way together during development in the womb. And so where the eye did not grow together to form a complete eyeball, I am missing parts of my iris, retina, optic nerve, all the way through from the front to the back. And it affects everyone differently. And it is not always a birth defect. Sometimes it can be caused by trauma. So it's any damage or mutilation to the eye can be considered a coloboma.
And you were born with this?
I was born with coloboma in both eyes from birth, and had some associated eye conditions along with that, such as congenital cataracts, nystagmus, astigmatism. I have quite a laundry list of eye conditions that were associated with the coloboma. But I did have enough vision early on in my childhood to ride a bicycle, to walk without a cane, and up until middle age, up until my 30s.
Okay. I want to talk now about college. So after high school, you studied radio and television in, I believe, Auburn. Can you talk about that?
I actually studied radio and television at the University of South Alabama in Mobile right out of high school for a few years. And it was always something that I enjoyed. I enjoyed listening to radio stations, finding radio stations from large distances, doing radio plays in high school, playing around with mixing music tracks together, just having a lot of fun. I worked briefly in high school through the Boy Scouts of America, had a program where I was able to go and do some work in one of the radio stations in Mobile, learning how to produce radio commercials and being on the air, and just learning some of the technical aspects of radio production. So it was something I was interested in, I really enjoyed, and started that program in high school, in high school, and then carried on with that into college. I was in college at South Alabama for a few years, and decided after I got married that I would drop out and work so that my husband could finish college, and then we would switch. And that just never happened. I dropped out, went to work, and he continued on in college, and then we divorced. And I did not decide to go back to college until I was in my mid-30s. And a friend of mine had also decided that once her children were grown, she was going to go back to school. And I went to Auburn and helped her find some of her classes and work with some of her technology, and thought that it was a good idea, that maybe I could do that too. So I ended up enrolling in the industrial design program at Auburn University at, I think the age of 36 or 37, and went back to school and finished my degree.
Yeah, I think you went to Auburn in 2015.
That's when I graduated from Auburn. I actually started at Auburn in 2012.
Okay. And then after that, you went to Western Michigan. Is that correct?
It is. While I was in Auburn, I had no intention of going to get my master's degree. I'd planned on going into a rehab engineering program, and did an internship with a rehab engineer between my junior and senior years, and decided that as much as I enjoyed it, I really liked teaching better. I liked working with the clients and teaching them how to get the technology and other devices that they needed to go to work or go to school. So when I came back for college my senior year at Auburn, I looked into going and getting my master's degree in vision rehab therapy, and ended up going to Western Michigan.
And I believe that that's where you lost the rest of your vision.
It was. I graduated from Auburn in May of 2015. I had a couple of surgeries during my time at Auburn. My vision was fluctuating, it would come back after surgery and then start to deteriorate again. And finally, in the fall of 2015, at the end of my first semester at Western Michigan, I was told that my glaucoma was bad enough that I needed surgery. And I went into surgery a month before the end of my semester because it couldn't wait. and came out with the, I'm not sure assurance is the right word for it, but came out being told that my vision should come back in a few days, and it did not. So at that point, after doing some tests, I decided that I'd had enough of surgery and my vision was gone, and I was going to put college on hold for a bit and go get training. And I did that and was able to go back after my training program and finish my master's degree.
But in that time off, you went to the Louisiana School for the Blind. What did you learn there?
I went to the Louisiana Center for the Blind, which is in Ruston, and I learned better cane skills. I was already using a cane at that time, a white cane, but I learned better cane skills, better orientation and mobility skills. So I had always, up to that point, had enough vision to assist me in crossing the street and doing other things. And that program requires that you be blindfolded during the time of your program if you have any vision at all. And so I learned to do everything non-visually. I learned Braille. I learned how to use JAWS. I'd had a brief crash course in JAWS from a friend while I was trying to finish up some of my college courses. She loaned me her computer with JAWS and taught me a few basics, which allowed me to finish some of my programs, some of my courses. And let's see, what else did I learn? I learned adaptive techniques for basic living skills, cooking, which I was already pretty comfortable with, cleaning, making meals for a lot of people. We started out with a dinner party of 8, and at the end of my program, I had to cook a meal for everyone at the center, which turned out to be about 50 people. So it taught me a lot about managing, a large meal, throwing a dinner party, and of course gave me the confidence to know that I could do that independently. I also took industrial arts, so I did a lot of work in the wood shop, doing some home maintenance as well. That area was always kind of a love for me before I went, and getting the confidence to know that I could use those power tools safely. And, all the times that I had been told that because I was blind, I couldn't use power tools, it was really, really a big boost for me to know that I could do that and not only use them myself, but also teach other people. So I ended up at the end of that program doing 3-month internship in the industrial arts class, where the instructor taught me how to teach it, taught me how to break down the machines non-visually and listen for problems in the machines while they were running. So it's a really great experience for me.
I want to ask you a question about Braille. Do you think that's becoming a lost art?
Sadly,
we have all the technology.
I think most people do not believe that you should learn Braille because of technology. I think a lot of people think it's not necessary. But I really love low-tech solutions to technology problem. Technology can fail you. And basic Braille, basic writing with a slate and stylus, it's a pointed stylus and a piece of paper. You can't really go wrong with that. That's not going to run out of battery. It's not going to break down. At the very least, you may lose your stylus, and I have them all over the place. So that's not likely to happen. But I think it is still very valid. And I really love it when people tell me they want to learn Braille. And I love seeing people use it because it is still relevant.
And now these skills that you learned at the Blind Center allowed you to go back to Western Michigan and finish your degree.
They did. I completed my program in Louisiana in 7 months, just in time for me to start my second semester at Western Michigan the following month. So I graduated in December and started back at Western Michigan in January.
Can you talk about the Alabama School for the Deaf and Blind and the floating instructor job that you had there, what you were teaching?
Sure. While I was in Louisiana, the Alabama Institute for the Deaf and Blind started a structured discovery program, and the structured discovery method of learning blindness skills is something that was started by the National Federation of the Blind, and they have a couple of centers around the country, the one in Louisiana being one of them. And it's really based on teaching people to problem solve and teaching people how to figure things out for themselves. Because as I tell my students at the center now, I can teach you how to do this. I can tell you what to do, but I can't go home in your pocket unless you record me and you record our classes. So what I want to teach is, how do I figure out how to find what I need or do what I need to do on my own? And so it requires a little bit of out-of-the-box thinking to do that, and a little bit of practice at out-of-the-box thinking sometimes. But just learning that, if I didn't learn to do it in a class, I can figure out how to do it on my own. I have resources for that. And I know that's gotten a little off track of your question, but the Alabama Institute for the Deaf and Blind started the Alabama Freedom Center for the Blind in 2016. And after I completed my studies at Western Michigan, I worked there for a bit as a floating instructor. So that meant that if an instructor was out, they would ask me to come in and teach. And that meant I had to teach a little bit of everything. So I taught some orientation and mobility. I taught Braille. I taught living skills and technology. And I really enjoy doing that because it gives me a lot of variety in my teaching. And I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, or I guess a Jill of all trades, where I know a lot of things. I know a little bit about a lot of things and not a lot about any one particular subject. So it allowed me to really expand my teaching skills and make myself more marketable for when I did get a permanent position.
We're going to have to take a break here, so please stand by, Leslie.
All right.
VA's Office of Blind Rehabilitation Services estimates there are approximately 130,000 veterans in the United States who are legally blind, and more than 1 million veterans who have low vision that causes a loss of ability to perform necessary daily activities. In this era of instant communication, where we get overwhelmed with data or facts that are useless to unsighted individuals, wouldn't it be great if we could count on news focused on real problems that impact the daily lives of veterans without sight? Introducing Wisdom for Blinded Veterans, an advanced informational portal designed by blind veterans specifically for blind and vision impaired vets that, like them, are facing challenges every day. Hi, my name is Ben, and I know the frustration. I've struggled in day-to-day tasks for over 20 years since I lost my eyesight. One of my biggest challenges has always been trying to stay up to date with the latest information of my eye disease, local news, and the ever-changing technology. I wanted to be able to have one single site that merged all the data scattered, and that's why we created Wisdom for Blinded Vets. This is a portal that can be accessed via the web, a smartphone app, telephone, email, text messaging, or Amazon's Alexa. It integrates with readers such as JAWS or Apple's VoiceOver and various other tools to give you a seamless experience. This portal will keep us updated on a variety of topics and will share knowledge that can help make our lives easier and more fulfilled. Highlights of the topics covered on the portal include podcasts, events, news, blind rehab and training, information on the BVA and other groups, a list of coordinator and bros list, online groups to interact with fellow vets facing the same challenges, and much more. Give us a try. You will not be disappointed. To learn more about us, visit our website www.w4bv.org. If you're interested in sharing your knowledge, please consider becoming a contributor by logging into our portal and going to the contributor section for more information. Wisdom for Blinded Veterans, transforming blind veterans' lives.
Are you a big geek? Do you enjoy learning about new technology? Then join us on the fourth Thursday of every month for the Wisdom Geek Club at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also hear a pre-recorded episode on Wisdom Radio every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. For more information, hit up w4tb.org and click on the Geek Club button on the main page. And don't forget to share the wisdom with a friend.
You're listening to Wisdom for the Blind Radio, W4TV, from the studios in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the home of the Wisdom for Blinded Kids portal. Please enjoy the show, and don't forget to share the wisdom with a friend.
Okay, Leslie, we're back. I want to ask you about your passion for industrial design, industrial arts, and home maintenance. Where do you think that passion comes from?
I always enjoyed watching my dad when I was growing up. He didn't do a lot around the house in the way of fixing things, but we didn't have a lot of money. So sometimes fixing things was a necessity. And I just really enjoyed helping him and watching him and learning about what he was doing. And I've always been a hands-on kind of learner. I learn best when I'm doing something rather than just listening to instructions. So being able to get in and learn how to do things on my own was a lot of fun to me. My parents also instilled in me a pretty big sense of independence and being able to do things for myself. And I will never forget the first time I told my mom that I wanted a set of tools for Christmas because I was tired of waiting on people to come to my house and fix things for me. And at the very least, I wanted to have tools there in case I needed someone to fix things for me and they didn't have the right tools. So I started that way. It really just led to doing things for myself and learning how to do those things for myself. Even, small things like hanging pictures or just fixing minor problems. Later in my 20s, I started working for a friend of mine who had a farm. So all farm work is hands-on. You do all the work yourself to save money. And I learned a lot from my friend and also learned a lot in my own experience with a small farm. I had a couple of acres with a horse and some chickens, and my ex and I built everything ourselves. We built the chicken coop ourselves and put all the fencing up, and just learning how to do those things was fun. And I love to learn anyway. So always learning about new stuff and getting my hands dirty and having fun is just kind of relaxing to me. If I can sit down and solve a problem or fix something myself, it's a great sense of accomplishment. I'm challenged by problems. So I want to figure out how to fix them. And the more of a roadblock I have, the more determined I am to figure it out.
Now, you spoke a few minutes ago about using power tools. Do you have a favorite power tool?
Oh, I think my favorite power tool is probably the lathe or the router. There's just something about the way those machines run, especially using a router, a handheld router, where it's just me feeling how that machine is moving across the wood and getting to know how much it's taking off a little at a time. The lathe is kind of the same way. I can put the tool on the lathe and put my hand on the backside of that lathe and feel as that wood is turning exactly what I'm doing and exactly how that tool is shaping that wood. And so it's a very Zen-like meditative experience for me. It's very relaxing, and it allows me to really focus on what I'm doing.
I think I would agree. When I was in Birmingham the first time, back in 1983, I went through their manual skills shop, and they taught me how to use a router and then a lathe. And on the lathe, I made a table lamp out of cherry, and it turned out real nice. So I agree with you. Those are great power tools.
Very nice. There's also nothing more confidence building than, putting a piece of wood through a table saw and not losing fingers.
I was kind of scared when I used the lathe for the first time. I had used it when I was sighted in high school, but I didn't think I would be able to use it being visually impaired, but I was able to, and I enjoyed it.
Good. It's great fun.
Yeah. I want to talk about the VA now. In 2018, you accepted a position at the Blind Rehab Center in Biloxi, Mississippi. How were you introduced to the VA, or how did you find the VA?
The friend that I spoke of earlier that decided to go back to school, when she finished school, she took a position at the VA, partly due to the fact that the vision rehab therapy program at Western Michigan often tries to get their students into the VA for their internships. And she was hired on at the VA in Birmingham for her internship. And then once she finished her internship, they hired her directly into the program. And so that, knowing her, gave me some insight into the VA. I had no idea about the manual skills program until she took that job. And once I found out about that, I just thought that was what I wanted to do. As I said earlier, I really enjoyed teaching. I enjoyed working with my hands, and the industrial design program taught me how to design projects and products. And so putting all that together in one job just sounded like the place that I wanted to be. And so when I went through my master's degree program at Western Michigan, I did my internship in Birmingham as well. And a couple of months after I finished my internship, while I was working for the Alabama Institute of the Deaf and Blind at their Freedom Center, a friend of mine called me up, and she had just taken a position in Biloxi and said, "Hey, we're hiring. Are you still looking for a full-time job?" And so that's what got me in.
What kinds of things do you teach the blinded veterans at the manual skills shop?
Well, manual skills is primarily about learning to do a lot of things that you don't even realize you're learning sometimes. It builds hand strength. It builds dexterity when you're working with your hands. You enhance your learning of spatial awareness, which is important when you are doing orientation and mobility, to keep your awareness of your surroundings and keep your orientation. That's true of working with your hands and manual skills as well. It builds confidence. If you have been a woodworker and now feel like you can't do it, and you go over in that shop and learn that it doesn't matter that you can't see, you can still walk up to one of those big power tools like that table saw, turn it on, and use it safely. That goes a long way in helping someone realize that blindness doesn't have to be an end. It doesn't end their life. It also gives your brain the opportunity to relax and absorb all the other things that you've been learning. So when you come into the center, you learn, living skills and technology and orientation and mobility. And then you come to manual skills and you get to use the creative side of your brain. And that gives the other side of your brain, that logical side, a chance to process all that other information, relax, take it all in, and help you absorb it better. It's also a great stress reliever to come in and work with your hands. Some people really enjoy that point when they get to making a leather belt where they get to punch the holes in the leather, because you do that with a hammer, and it can be a lot of fun and very stress relieving to do that. Also learning to do that with various techniques to keep you from hitting your thumb. Doesn't mean you won't hit your thumb at some point in your life, but it reduces that chance. And so we do a lot of projects in there that I can't think of any other way to explain them other than to say that they're crafts, but they can also help people develop new hobbies. If you come in and you make a leather belt for the first time, which is a very basic project, but much more time consuming than you realize, it may help you find a new hobby that you can then take home and do yourself and either make money at or make gifts for your family and friends. We do a lot of small projects in leather: bags, phone cases, wallets. We do copper toolings, which is laying a piece of thick copper foil on top of a form, which is usually a raised picture done in resin. And you take a stylus wrapped in leather and and rub the top of that copper until that form starts to come through. And then you have a tactile picture that you can not only show to your family and friends because it looks very nice, but you can feel what that picture is. Then you do the frame for it and go through the process of putting all that together. We do occasionally do ceramics. Some people will come in and go through the entire process of pouring the ceramics into a mold, the slip into a mold, and forming the ceramics, firing them in the kiln, then painting them and firing them again. Some people just want to do the painting. So we have ceramic items that are already formed, and that can also save time if you don't have time to do another project from start to finish. You can do a project that's already been started. And then, of course, there's the wood shop. And mostly what we do there are small projects like turning pins on the lathe or making a wooden amplifier box to sit your phone in and amplify the sound out the front when you listen to music or listen to a podcast. And those are just quick projects that you can do. Birdhouses are popular because you only have 4 weeks. So it doesn't really give you time to do an intensive project. But we do have some guys, especially ones with a lot of experience, who come in and can make a project or two from start to finish without any trouble in that time frame.
Now, I guess there is a reason why the leather belt is the first thing that a veteran does in manual skills.
Well, it is, like I said, a basic project for someone who does not have a lot of good spatial awareness, may not have a lot of good dexterity or hand strength. It's a fairly easy project to do. It helps you develop those skills in you have to put the tool in the right place to burnish the edges and make them smooth. You have to be aware when you're staining it or adding a protective coat, where you're at on the belt. If you've already applied stain to one part of it and you put the rag in the stain and go to apply it to the next section of the belt, you kind of have to know where you started and stopped. And it's a manageable project for most people. So it's something small. It's easy to take home. It can be a fairly quick project for some people. For someone who's just starting out for the first time, it may take them a few weeks, but it can usually be done in conjunction with another small project. And for someone whose confidence is not quite there and is not quite ready to go over to the wood shop and use a power tool, it can just be a way to relax. And it's a safe project. So they don't have to be afraid of tools or nervous about things. It's just something they can do to come in and relax and make something nice.
I didn't take making that leather belt serious when I did my first one in '83.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember my instructor tearing links out of it and saying, no, it's got to be this way. And, it took me a little more time than normal to do that belt. But I enjoyed it. I still have it.
Yeah, nice.
And I still have some of those pictures that I did where you take the stylus and you rub the copper over the mold and then make frames. I still have some of those today that I did in 1983.
Those are my favorite. Copper is a medium that I was working with as a hobby before I came to the VA. It's something I was introduced to in college as part of an industrial design project. And so coming into the VA and being able to teach people the enjoyment of making those copper pictures is a lot of fun. And for veterans who come in who have done all the copper pictures, the Last Supper and the smaller pictures, and they just want to do something different, I can help them go to the next level and do some freehand work or figure out ways to make copper pictures of their own design. And that's a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Does the manual skills shop offer a metal class? When I went to Birmingham in 1983, they had a metal shop. Does Biloxi offer a metal shop?
We do not. And I'm not sure that we ever have. Biloxi has been open for, I believe, 10 or 11 years now. And to my knowledge, they have never offered a metal shop. We do offer a home maintenance, and we have a small engine, like a lawnmower engine in there, if someone wants to take that apart and put it back together We also have, toilet tanks and sink faucets and false doors with door locks so people can practice changing out locks, putting together and disassembling toilets and sinks and other things. That's about as close as we have. We don't have any kind of a metal shop.
When I was in Birmingham in 1983 and went through the metal shop, I made myself a click ruler. Do you know what that is?
I do. The click ruler is my favorite measuring tool. We have talking tape measures, but I absolutely love the click ruler. I think I have 3 or 4 of them here at home.
Let me ask you one more question, and then we'll go to our second break.
Mm-hmm.
How do you relate to the veterans there at the Blind Rehab Center?
Losing my vision, of course, as I said earlier, I was born with a visual impairment, but I had vision until I was in my late 30s, early 40s. And losing the remainder of my vision, going through a training program and experiencing all the frustrations that come along with learning how to be blind, learning all those skills that you need to be a successful blind person. I went through all that. So I know what they're going through when they come in and they've just lost their sight recently, or their vision has just made a drastic change recently, and they're overwhelmed and they're struggling to learn these things. And they see someone like me who's been using, say, voiceover for years, and they get encouraged by that to see someone who can use it that efficiently, but they also are discouraged because they compare themselves to someone who's been doing it for years. So I understand what they're going through. I've been in their shoes to an extent. Of course, I was never able to drive a car, so losing that level of freedom for me was not as traumatic as it is for some people. But it does give me some insight into what they're going through. And I can share my experiences with them. I can talk to them about, not comparing themselves to other people, and basically, knowing that they're not alone, that they're not the only ones that have gone through this, although they're with a group of other veterans. Their instructors have also gone through some of that as well. So we know, and that can help us build a relationship with the veterans who are there, because we do understand.
Okay, we're going to go to our second break, so please stand by.
Do you enjoy a good time with your fellow brothers and sisters? Do you enjoy the fresh sea breeze? Do you enjoy deep sea fishing? Then Wisdom for the Blind has something just for you. On May 5th, 2023, Wisdom for the Blind has chartered the Double Eagle 3 in Clearwater Beach, Florida for an entire day of fun in the sun and deep sea fishing. Go to w4tv.org and register for this upcoming event. Check out our website and register now. Seats are limited. Please share the wisdom and tell a friend.
If you or someone you know is having thoughts of suicide or experiencing a mental health or substance use crisis, 988 provides direct connection to free, confidential, and compassionate support. When you call, text, or chat 988, you'll be quickly connected to trained crisis counselors who will listen to your concerns, provide support, and connect you to additional resources if needed. There is hope. The Lifeline works. You are not alone in crisis. For 24/7 confidential support, just call, text, or chat 988.
You're listening to W4TB Radio from the Wisdom for the Blind studios in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where we share some wisdom to help you navigate the seas to stay in calm waters. Please visit us on the web at w4tb.org or drop us an email at feedback@w4tb.org. You can also download the W4TB radio app at the Apple Store or Google Play. Please share the knowledge and tell a friend. Now, back to the show.
Okay, Leslie, we're back. want to talk about your guide dog now. In one of your podcast episodes, you mentioned that you had just gotten back from going through the training to get a guide dog.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of a dog did you get? Where did you go? And how was your experience?
So I applied to the Seeing Eye in New Jersey. It's the oldest guide dog school in the country. And I applied there specifically because I related to their training methods. They most closely resembled the kind of training methods I've used when training dogs. So that was a big selling point for me. And I actually applied a month before my dog was born. It took 2 years because of COVID to get into the school. But I ended up with a small chocolate lab. She's about 21 inches tall, little under 50 pounds, and she's a spitfire. She doesn't let anything stand in her way. She's fearless. I've had her now for almost 5 months. It'll be 5 months next week, and she's been a great companion so far. I really enjoyed having her. It was a lot of hard work. They tell you when you apply to be prepared to walk 4 or 5 miles a day, and they're not really exaggerating. Of course, you're not typically doing that all at once. You spend some time waiting for the trainer to work with other people. You're assigned to a group with one trainer and 3 to 4 students, and the trainer goes out and works with each student individually. So there's a lot of downtime sitting in the van or sitting in the training center waiting your turn. Sometimes you go out in pairs with one of your teammates, but you do a lot of walking. It's a lot of early mornings, late nights, learning how to take care of a dog. They treat everyone as though they have never had a dog before. Some people that they get have never even seen a dog before. And so they do things in ways that, as an experienced dog owner, I, roll my eyes at a little bit. But it's understandable because they do get people there who have never been around a dog or handled a dog before, and they kind of have to treat everybody the same on some level. So it was a really good experience. The food there was fantastic, and I actually gained weight the first week. Had to quit eating so many desserts. But it was a lot of fun, a lot of hard work, and when I came out of that, my dog and I were already bonding pretty closely, and she's been a good worker for me ever since.
Wow, nice. I want to start talking about your podcast now,
Okay.
Hands-on Safety. Can you give me the URL to your website?
So the website is handsonsafety.net, and that's all one word.
And then you can find your podcast on all the podcast services.
Yep, all the major podcast services. You can find us on Facebook by searching for Hands on Safety Podcasts, and you can find us on Twitter at hands_safety.
I listened to your podcast on a Victor Reader.
Nice.
Was the podcast your idea?
It was. So a little bit of background before I explain that. My co-hosts are George Freeman and Megan Hargrave, and Megan and I have been friends for years. We worked together on another podcast about technology for the blind and visually impaired. And I met George at a self-defense instructor's course. We were both certified instructors for the One Touch self-defense program, which was developed as a self-defense training program for people who are blind or low vision. And when I met him, we had a conversation about how to get safety and safety education to people who didn't readily have access to a training center. They didn't have access to a one-touch coach, or they didn't have access to, say, a martial arts studio that they could easily get to. How do we get them information that can still help them even though they can't take self-defense classes? And that got me thinking about doing a podcast. And so I asked George to come on the show with me. He was a career Army veteran. He just retired from the Army shortly before I met him. He was running his, and still is running his own Taekwondo studio in Savannah, Georgia. And he'd done a lot of research about safety over the years. And so he had the knowledge, I had the know-how to start a podcast, and that got us going. And my friend Megan wanted to come in. She's a young woman living in Calgary, Canada. So she's in a large city. She was working at a job that required her to walk home, often at midnight in downtown Calgary, which is not the safest area to be in. She is also blind and had a guide dog at the time. And she really wanted to come on the show and learn about it herself and ask questions. And so that's how we got started. And we started in March of 2020 with our first episode. And we've been putting out an episode about once a month ever since. And we just finished episode 25.
Yeah, I listened to that today.
Nice.
I did the same thing that George, your co-host, did in the Army. I was in tanks, but I think I was in a model before the one he was in.
Mm-hmm.
I've also done Taekwondo. I have a red belt with a black tip. Do you know anything about Taekwondo?
I do. I took Taekwondo right after high school when I first started college at South Alabama. I had to walk on campus at night a lot for some of my classes. And so I felt like taking something like Taekwondo was a way to make me feel more secure. Before I started taking it, I was carrying a small keychain canister of mace that you could buy at the bookstore. Sometimes I was carrying an umbrella just to have some kind of weapon if I needed it. And that got me interested in Taekwondo. And I started out taking it my first year of college. I got as far as yellow belt, 3rd degree. And the next level was green belt, which started sparring. And I had eye surgery the year before. And at that time, my parents were not enthusiastic about the idea of me sparring and getting hit in the head and undoing that surgery that I'd had done. So I ended up dropping out, and the 3rd degree yellow belt was as high as I made it.
I was just chuckling about being hit. I've been hit in the face and kicked in the stomach, kicked in the knee.
Yep. I would love to go back and take self-defense classes now. I just don't live with easy access to studio, which is part of what encouraged me to start the podcast is my own limitations in having access to the information and self-defense classes.
Now, how different is the One Touch program from Taekwondo?
One Touch was developed using martial arts techniques from a variety of different disciplines. It's largely based on disciplines like judo or jiu-jitsu, where you have a lot of grappling moves. So it keeps you in contact with your attacker at all times, because once you let go of them, as a blind person, you don't know where they are. And so if you've got contact with them at all times until you feel that you're at a point of being able to safely walk away from that person, it helps you know what's going on. It keeps them where you know where they are. And it can also give you information about them. So if somebody grabs my hand or grabs my arm and I reach over and grab them back, I get instant information. I get an idea of how tall they are. I can tell by their hand if they're male or female. Maybe they are wearing a ring or a bracelet, or they're missing a finger. That might be an identifying mark that if I need to tell the police, I can give them at least that little bit of a description with an opportunity to help identify my attacker. So it was started that way. One Touch has since gone out of business, and you may have heard us talk on Hands on Safety about the SEED program, which has been formed by quite a few instructors that were with One Touch at the time. And we have restarted that program. We've filled in some of the gaps that the One Touch program had in information they didn't give you, or things they didn't teach you. We've tried to fill in those gaps and make the SEED program, which stands for Safety, Education, and Empowering Defense, a better program.
Taekwondo, I guess the object of that martial art is keeping people away from you. There's no grappling in Taekwondo.
Right.
Is SEED all over the country? Are there SEED clubs in Florida, you know?
Let me think. Do I know anyone in Florida? Not right off the top of my head, but I could get back to you on that. We are growing. George is a SEED instructor. I am working on getting my certification to be a SEED instructor. We have instructors in Texas, California, I believe Wisconsin, Missouri, and we are adding people all the time. About every 6 months, we do an instructor training course and add more people. So we are growing, and if we are not in Florida now, hopefully we will be soon.
Yeah, okay. I want to talk about your Calling for Help podcast. Why is it important to set up emergency contacts in your smartphone?
If you are incapacitated and a first responder gets to you, they can see a button on your iPhone for emergency contacts or for medical ID, and that can have your emergency contacts in it. That gives someone who doesn't know you but is trying to help you the opportunity to contact that person or group of people and let them know what your situation is. It also sets up the phone, at least on the iPhone, and we did talk some about the Android as well. It sets up the phone so that if you use the button to call 911 by either pressing and holding the lock screen button to call 911 or clicking that button 5 times to call 911, it will also send a message to your emergency contacts that you have in place and let them know that you might be in trouble. So it just gives you quick access to people that may need to know your situation very quickly. And if you have a police officer, first responder who is going to, even if they open your phone and they look in your contacts for someone to call about you, if you have your contacts set up with your emergency contacts, if you have the letters ICE, ICE, in front of their first name, the first responders can search for that and find people that you want to have in place in case of an emergency and be able to contact them quickly.
Okay. How important is it to set up your health information in the health app?
I would say if you are in a situation where you cannot provide your own medical information, that is going to give, again, first responders access to your medical ID. For instance, with coloboma, my eyes do not dilate at normal speed. And so if I'm incapacitated and a paramedic shines a light in my eyes, my pupils are not going to change as quickly as most people's do. And they may think from that information that I have a brain injury or other problems that may not actually be the case. So putting that information in my medical ID to say that I have a coloboma, my eyes do not dilate normally, gives them that little bit of information that I might not be able to tell them. Giving them information about medications I might be allergic to is important. I think they try not to give medications while you're incapacitated on the scene to that are common allergens like penicillin, but not that they would be administering penicillin to you on the scene of an accident or an attack, but it just lets them know that you have some medications that you're allergic to. You could also have information in there to let them know about medications you are currently taking so that they're aware of any potential drug interactions. If they're going to have to administer some medication to you, they'll have information in there that says, you know, this drug may not work because of something that this person is taking.
Okay. We're going to have to take a break here, so please stand by, Leslie.
I took a musket ball in Chancellorsville.
Hi, I'm Mike Byer, Executive Director for Operation Psalm. where we pair Nashville's songwriters with veterans, active duty military, and their families to tell their stories through the process of songwriting. Our services are 100% free, and songwriting or musical talent is not required. For more information, check us out at operationsong.org. If you think this is something you're interested in, email us at contact@operationsong.org.
Till the last Monday in May.
Do you enjoy a good read? Or do you enjoy sharing new books with friends? Then join us on the second Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Wisdom Books, a virtual book club just for the blind or visually impaired. You can also hear a pre-recorded episode on Wisdom Radio every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. For more information, go to w4tb.org. and click the link Wisdom Books for more information. And please don't forget to share the wisdom.
You're listening to Wisdom for the Blind Radio, W4TV, from the studios in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the home of the Wisdom for Blinded Kids portal. Please enjoy the show, and don't forget to share the wisdom with a friend.
Okay, Leslie, we're back. I want to talk a little bit about your podcast 3, Situational Awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about the differences being aware of your situation and being aware of your surroundings?
Sure. Being aware of your surroundings is something that you should practice every day, no matter how safe you feel. If you are out walking, you should always be aware of your environment, just because that's going to help you keep your orientation. If I'm walking across the parking lot here at my complex, I've got to always be listening for cars, even if I'm just listening to the road. So if I go out at night and there's not likely to be cars coming through the parking lot, I still want to be able to hear that road so that I can keep it on my right, know where I am, and help me keep my orientation that way. It's important when I'm walking through a building to be able to pay attention to my surroundings so that I can hear openings of doorways or hallways. That tells me when to turn, gives me some information about where I'm going. If I'm in a store, maybe I hear the freezers in the back, or I hear the cash registers up front, and all of that helps me keep my orientation. Having situational awareness is a little different because you're still doing all of those things, but now you're aware more of who's around you. When I approach the bus stop in the mornings, it's early in the mornings. During the winter, it's still dark. I want to be paying attention to, is someone at that bus stop? Because people don't always say anything. I walked up to the bus stop and had someone say hi right as I get to them, or not speak at all until I've been standing there for a minute, or I hear them do something and it startles me. So I want to be aware when I'm approaching a situation like a bus stop of who might be standing there. And I'm going to use all my senses to do that. I'm not only going to use my sense of hearing to see if, are they talking? Are they making any noises? Do I hear someone walking toward me? I'm going to be checking for smells. Do I smell cigarettes or cologne or perfume? All of those things are going to help me determine if someone's there and what they're doing. Partly, I don't want to run into them. And of course, my cane's going to tell me that. My cane's going to hit them first. But I just want to have an idea of the situation that I'm walking into. If I'm walking into a store, I want to be aware of what's going on in that store. Does it sound like people are shopping or, going about their day? Or does it sound like someone might be holding up the cash register? Did I just walk into a bad situation? I guess a better example of that might be a bank, at least a cliche example of that. But all of those are times when I want to be aware of who's around me just as much as I want to be aware of what's around me in terms of objects and buildings.
How important is it to be aware of your own abilities?
I think knowing what you're capable of helps give you confidence. Knowing that you have the tools that you need to handle yourself, whether it's just the ability to quickly call 911 if you need it. Having those skills is something that's going to help you have confidence when you go out. Alternatively, if you don't have skills, then maybe that encourages you to go learn more. Maybe you feel like you need to learn self-defense. Maybe you feel like you need to learn how to use your phone better so that if you are in a bad situation, you can have those tools to get yourself out. But knowing what tools are in your toolkit is always a good idea to know how to handle a situation when you get there.
Should you always trust your own feelings?
I would say yes, just because even if you're wrong, it's not likely to hurt you to be wrong. If someone approaches you and you have a bad feeling about that person, but they turn out to be friendly, then, that's okay. Or you had a bad feeling about that person, and you walked away from someone who might have helped you. You didn't lose anything by trusting those instincts. Even if you get into a situation where, knowing self-defense, you choose to defend yourself against someone who it turns out was really just trying to help you. Maybe they walked up and grabbed you without asking, and that triggered a response, and you punched them in the face, or you shoved them away from you and they got hurt. It's better to trust your instinct in that situation than to do nothing and run the risk of getting hurt yourself. So maybe you reacted a little more aggressively than you should have, but who's to say that had you not reacted that way, you wouldn't have gotten hurt?
Okay, now I want to move on to Calm Before the Storm. I think that's your podcast number 4.
Mm-hmm.
How important is it to have a plan A, but to also have a plan B?
Well, I kind of feel like plan A's never really work the way they should. So having a backup plan is important. Having alternative options, whether it's a plan B, plan C, plan D, even if you have to use a combination of those things, you can plan as much as you can possibly plan. And that doesn't mean that when you get into that situation, things are going to go exactly as planned. So being flexible and being able to incorporate other things or change your plan, it's just a healthy attitude to adopt to provide you some flexibility and know that if that first plan doesn't work, you're not stuck. You've got other options.
When should you prepare for a disaster, a hurricane, a heavy snowstorm? When should you prepare?
Now. The sooner the better. I mean, certainly, you don't want to wait till it starts snowing to prepare for a snowstorm, or you don't want to wait till that hurricane is approaching land to prepare. You could certainly say with both of those situations that they're seasonal. So during the summer, you could be preparing for that snowstorm, or during the winter, you could be preparing for that hurricane. But the best time to prepare is now. Having that stuff on hand when it's needed, because when it is needed, the chances of you being able to get things that you don't have are less likely.
Can you talk briefly about what is a bug-out bag?
A bug-out bag is a bag that you keep packed, and it has maybe a couple of changes of clothes. It may have some blankets. It may have a little bit of food, copies of documents you might need. So for me, I may need copies of my insurance, whether it's a homeowner's policy or medical insurance. Now I would also need copies of my dog's health records, just in case that's needed if I have to go to a shelter or I have to show that information to somebody. I have copies of her rabies tag number. I have copies of her microchip number, and I keep that information in multiple formats. So I have it printed, but I may also have it on my phone and, on my computer as well.
Now I want to talk about your podcast 14, Make Good Choices. How important is it to go out with a buddy, the buddy system? If you're going to a bar or shopping, how important is it to go with a buddy?
Well, it kind of goes back to that, those emergency contacts and setting up medical IDs on your phone. If you're out alone and something happens to you, you only have that information for first responders to find. But if you're with a friend and something happens to you, they may be able to call 911. They may be able to tell the first responders what to look at, to show them information. They can certainly tell the police what happened. They can be a witness if you need them. If someone's going to attack you, say you're walking down the street at night and someone's going to attempt to steal your wallet, it's much more likely to happen if you're alone than it is if you're with a friend. So having a buddy can go a long way in protecting you.
When you go out, how important is it to distribute your cash and your keys, maybe a flashlight, a knife, into different pockets, pants pockets, a shirt pocket, coat pockets? How important is that to distribute those items?
Well, if you, again, are in a situation where someone is going to try to rob you, you potentially have something you can throw in the opposite direction. So if you have a little roll of dollar bills, you can kind of throw it off and say, there, you go get that while I go the other way. Your things are not all in one place. So if someone is going to come up and pickpocket you, they're going to go for something they see, or they're going to go for the most easily accessible pocket or bag that you might have. And if all your items are there, your keys, your wallet, your phone, even a knife or a flashlight, they're going to get those things and leave you with nothing, as opposed to someone who goes after a pocket or a purse and only gets a few items. You still have money. You might still have your phone. You might still have your keys. So having those things in a variety of places is going to keep you from losing everything. It's not keeping all your eggs in one basket.
The last podcast I want to talk about is There's No Place Like Home. It's podcast number 17. How does one go about choosing an accessible home alarm system?
I think I mentioned this on the show. I got a lot of information because a friend posted a question on Facebook and said, I'm looking at home alarm systems. It needs to be accessible. What do people have? And so all their blind friends responded with all these different home systems, all these different ways to secure their homes, whether it was a dedicated home security system, or it was just using an Amazon or Google device with, the limited security they have, like the guard mode on the A-Lady devices. And I won't say her name because we potentially set off everybody's devices. But just a quick question. What is everybody using? Got a lot of information. You can certainly call the companies. If you're thinking about getting a home security system, you can call them and talk to them about accessibility. You can search the web for that particular home security device. Chances are, if you call a home security company and you say, are your devices accessible for people who are blind? They may not have any idea. But if you call and you ask questions like, is the keypad on the home security device tactile? Does it have physical buttons, or is it a flat screen or a flat panel? When you push those buttons, does it talk? Asking more questions in those terms can help you determine what may work for you. Sometimes with devices or systems that use an app, you can go download the app before you ever buy the device, and you may not get any further than creating an account or just the initial splash screen, but sometimes that can give you an idea of how accessible that app is to VoiceOver. If I can't even create an account on my own, chances are I'm probably going to have a difficult time using the app once I get in. It's not always the case, but more often than not, it will be.
And can you talk about the Ring doorbell?
The Ring doorbell is kind of nice because you don't have to plug it in. It doesn't have to be hardwired into your home. So it's great if you have an apartment because it can be mounted to the outside of the door frame with screws or double-sided tape. I believe is also an option. I don't actually have one, so I'm not quite sure of the mounting methods, but it doesn't have to be hardwired. So if your apartment complex allows you to mount something outside of your apartment, you can certainly put that in place. It runs on batteries. It has a charge of about, I think, 1,000 activations before you have to charge the battery again. So maybe every 6 months or so, depending on how much activity is around your doorway, you may have to pull it off the mount, pop it on the charger for a few hours, and then put it back out there. The downside to that is that, and this just happened to a friend of mine, someone walked right up to her front of her house and stole her video doorbell off the front of her house. She'd found out who it was and she was able to get it back. It turned out to be a neighborhood teenager, but they still just took it right off and walked away with it. So not having it permanently mounted is a little bit of a challenge or a downside, but, isn't something that happens often, I don't think. If you have the device with the screen, you actually have access to the video on the screen. Although it does send it to your phone, you can see what the doorbell camera is showing through your Amazon device screen. If you have an Amazon Fire Stick, it can even bring that information up on your television screen if you're watching TV through the Fire Stick at the time.
Okay. And I'd just like to say before we go to break that there is a lot more information on these podcasts than we've talked about. It's hard to pick things out of each podcast to talk about. I didn't even mention all of the podcasts that you've done. Now, on your website, you have show notes to all these podcasts. Is that correct?
Yes. And those show notes can also be accessed from within the podcasting apps, Spotify, Apple, Google. When you bring up that podcast, you're going to see those show notes and you're going to see links to different websites, different products. If it's got a link to it, to information that we've used in the podcast, we provide a link in the show notes that you can access.
Okay. We're going to take one last break, and then I just have a few more questions. Okay, so just please stand.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Christina Hepner.
And I'm Leslie Hoskins, and we're hosts of the Taking the Lead podcast from Leader Dogs for the Blind.
Our podcast provides insight into the blindness community and impactful stories from our clients.
At Leader Dog, we continue to be the answer for thousands who need our free services. These include guide dog training, white cane training, and more. Once clients complete training, they're reintroduced to a life of safety and independence.
Learn more at leaderdog.org.
What's more perfect than exploring new cultures while soaking up the sun and dipping your toes in turquoise waters? Doing these things with your family and, of course, your brothers and sisters from Wisdom for the Blind. Wisdom for the Blind is pleased to announce its first Caribbean Forum to be held on board Royal Caribbean's Harmony of the Seas. This dreamy vacation will be filled with thrilling experiences such as surfing, rock climbing, and even an electrifying 10-story plunge in the tallest slide at sea. This is not your average family getaway. There's fun and entertainment for all ages, but you'll also have learning workshops in technology and medical breakthroughs focused on the blind and vision impaired. We will sail from beautiful Miami on October 15th, 2023, visiting fabulous ports: Rotan in Honduras, Costa Maya and Cozumel in Mexico, and Royal Caribbean's private island, Coco Cay in the Bahamas. Add 2 spectacular days at sea, and while connecting with people that may experience the same challenges you do, you'll find unforgettable activities, make lasting memories, and soar to new heights. You'll learn about fascinating cultures and customs while tasting local delicacies and lounging in luxury. Wisdom for the Blind has also partnered with Operation Song, so you can have the opportunity to tell your service stories through songwriting. All of this and more starts at just $602 per person, based on double occupancy plus taxes and fees of $168. So what are you waiting for? Pack up your stuff, gather the crew, and head out on the open seas. You and your family will be talking about it for many years to come. Don't miss this great opportunity. Go to w4tb.org and find the button that says Caribbean Forum, or email us at forum@w4tb.org and book now. Space is limited. Don't forget to share the wisdom and tell a friend. You're listening to W4TB Radio from the Wisdom for the Blind studios in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where we share some wisdom to help you navigate the seas to stay in calm waters. Please visit us on the web at w4tb.org or drop us an email at feedback@w4tb.org. You can also download the W4TB radio app at the Apple Store or Google Play. Please share the knowledge and tell a friend. Now, back to the show.
Okay, we're back. I just want to talk about some of the things that you do outside of work. Do you like traveling to new places with your dog? Can you just talk briefly about that?
Sure. I specifically requested a dog that was comfortable with a lot of situations. Sometimes, if you don't do a lot of traveling, it doesn't matter so much that your dog knows how to ride a bus or a train or board a subway or escalators, depending on what you do. But I needed a dog that could handle just about anything. And fortunately, my dog has a wonderful sense of adventure. And a lot of curiosity. So she's always ready to go take on any challenge. Traveling with a dog is a little bit different than traveling with a cane. I, of course, have to do a little more work before I travel, especially with the airlines now. I have to fill out paperwork for the various airlines. Each one requires a form before I travel. And fortunately, I only have to do that once a year. I have to pack food for her. For the last time I was gone, I had to pack food for 2 weeks. I was home for a few days, packed food for another 2 weeks, and we were gone again. I have to be more aware of her eating and bathroom schedule when I'm traveling. So making sure that I can get her through a large airport and layovers without having to go to the bathroom, although they do have bathroom areas for the dogs now. My dog is a bit of a princess and she just doesn't like to use them. So I try to make sure that she's gone to the bathroom and I've limited her water before I go. But so far in the 5 months that I've had her, we've traveled to Salt Lake City. We've done rock climbing, or not rock climbing, but we've hiked in the mountains. We've been to Denver and Boulder. We've been to downtown New Orleans, where she encountered her first homeless person sleeping in the middle of the sidewalk, and she really didn't know what to do with that. We are going to be traveling to England at the end of the year. We're about to be traveling to California, where I'll be riding buses and trains. We've been to New York City. So we've already done a lot of things in 5 months. And sometimes I have to encourage her through that in situations where she's not familiar or she's a little uncomfortable. She's a young dog, so I have to try to encourage her, make things fun and exciting sometimes. Boarding a plane with her is fine with her because she's pretty small. So she can go right under the seat in front of me, and most people don't even know she's there. If she were a little bigger, that might be a little bit more of a challenge. But mostly the problems in traveling come with dealing with people who don't know how to handle someone with a service dog. I have to do a lot of explaining to people in TSA what has to happen. I have to do a lot of advocating for myself and for her when I travel to tell people, yes, she's allowed to come in your restaurant, or this is how this is going to work. With TSA, usually tell them, she's going to sit, she's going to keep all her gear on. I'm going to walk through the detector. She's going to come through. She is going to set it off. And then one of you lucky people get to pat her down, which you will get kissed and licked and loved on, and you get someone to make your day. So, and that gets most TSA agents to laughing and eases some of the tension. But I have to be prepared to advocate for us and tell people what to expect and how it works, because they often don't know.
And labs love to meet new people and kisses.
Yes, they do. They often ask me, will she be okay if I pat her down? I said, not only will she be okay, she's going to lick you in the face the entire time you do it, and she's going to enjoy every second of it.
That's funny. Can you talk about some of the woodworking that you do?
My first woodworking project was at the Louisiana Center for the Blind, And I, of course, as I said, had worked on a farm. I had helped build fencing and chicken coops and pens and other things. When I was industrial design, we had a wood shop in Auburn's industrial design program. And I was often told, you can't work with power tools because you can't see, and we don't know how to teach you how to do it safely. So, for a long time, I had to learn how to be a project manager. I had to bring up all the drawings and measurements and design, and then I had to direct people how to do it the way I wanted them to do it. But when I went to LCB, I learned I could do all those things myself. And so my first project, because I love to play board games and card games, was a game storage box with an inlaid chessboard on top. And I had to learn how to plan that project as a blind person. This is where Braille came in very handy. I had to write all my project designs out in Braille. I learned to design from the inside out. So how much space do I need inside this box? Or how much space does that chessboard take up to know how big I need to make the rest of it? And so that was my first adventure. The box itself was cut out of red oak plywood. And so I had to lay out all the pieces. I had to learn ways of marking those boards so that I'd know where to cut. And then I cut all the chessboard tiles out and on the table saw. And before I did that, I planed the boards to the thicknesses I want so that the tiles alternate in height. And I really used every machine in the shop to do that one project. I've also made Braille blocks. So a block of wood with 6 evenly spaced holes with pegs that are all sunk to the same depth in there so that people can use that to learn how to do Braille. I've since brought that project to the VA. So we've had veterans who have asked to make Braille blocks while they're learning Braille at the center. I've made wooden amplifier boxes, made bird houses, and a lot of small projects mostly. I have been dabbling a little bit in whittling. I'd really like someone to really sit down and show me the best ways to do that, but I've been learning most of what I know from books, but I have fun playing with it, and it's something that I can do at home because I do live in an apartment, and I think my neighbors in the apartment complex would probably kill me if I turned my spare bedroom into a wood shop. So I have to do what I can with hand tools and knives.
Yeah, I don't think they'd appreciate all that noise late at night.
No, definitely not.
Next to last question. How'd you get into rock climbing?
Rock climbing, I was introduced to rock climbing while at the center in Louisiana. They took all the students on a trip to Arkansas to Horseshoe Canyon Ranch, which is one of the premier climbing places in the country. They don't have a lot of high cliffs, but they have a lot of variety. And so they host rock climbing events every year for different types of climbs, and people come and do all kinds of types of climbs in a 24-hour period. And it really got me a lot of exposure to rock climbing. Of course, I was working with professionals who do this for fun, who do this for a living, who teach other people. And it was just freeing. It was so wonderful to get up on that rock, have to think about which muscles I had to move and where I had to move them. It's a very tactile experience. So if I'm feeling the rock face, I can follow lines of rock to maybe find handholds or footholds that I might be able to use. And I can kind of plan my trip up the rock that way. Of course, if I'm working with someone else who is acting as my belayer, they can tell me about handholds and footholds that I might not be able to find on my own. But just being able to focus on different parts of my body and focus on what I was doing was great. And when I could see, I was afraid of heights. And when I lost my vision, that was no longer a problem. So I could just climb up that wall and not even think about how high I was.
That sounds really cool. Anything we missed? Anything that you want to talk about?
I don't think so. Kayaking is another fun sport for me. I started out as I was losing my vision. I lived on the river for a while when I had my farm, and I would often put a large board out on the pier. We had actually found a giant green buoy marker, and so hung that up on the pier so I could see it from a distance. I would play radios so that I could hear home when I got close. And I would just paddle up and down the river all the time. And I've since done whitewater rafting, which was also fun. But knowing that I could go out in a kayak and be okay and, keep my awareness of where I was, either by the sun or by what I was hearing around me, and get back home safely was very freeing for me.
The last thing, you've mentioned this before earlier in the podcast, but I want to have you mention your favorite saying about driving one more time.
My favorite saying is that I can do anything except drive a car, and Google or Tesla will fix that one day. I should probably also extend that to flying planes, but I try to keep it simple.
Yeah, that's a great saying. Well, thank you very much, Leslie. I really appreciate this, and I think this has been a lot of great information. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed coming on the show and talking to you.
I think we're going to have you come on another podcast in the future. So we'll look forward to that.
That would be great. I love talking to people and bringing them information about things they might not know and sharing my experiences in hopes that other people will get out there and do things and realize that they can do things too. And I've had lots of veterans tell me, if you can do it, I can do it. And I love to hear that.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Leslie Dickson from Hands On Safety. This is Doug Cram. Take care.
You've been listening to InSight to the VA. The VA is there for veterans like us, but sometimes it can be difficult for people to navigate. And that's why we're here. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, rate, and review. And make sure to tell a friend or two. That would help as well. Produced by Wisdom for the Blind and VNS Productions, a division of VNS International. From the Wisdom for the Blind studios in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, this is InSight to the VA, signing off. Wisdom for the Blind is dedicated to doing everything we can for the blind and sight impaired. If you'd like to bless us with a donation to keep the website, the podcast, the webinars, and the radio station operating, we can't express how grateful we'd be. You can go to the website at w4tb.org. That's w4tb.org and hit the donation button. Or you can mail it to Wisdom for the Blind Incorporated. Attention donations. 1005 Marina Mile Boulevard, Suite 255, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33315. Wisdom for the Blind is a not-for-profit 501c3 organization. Remember, it's tax deductible. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts at Wisdom for the Blind.
You're listening to Wisdom for the Blind Radio, W4TV, from the studios in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the home of the Wisdom for Blinded Kids portal. Please enjoy the show, and don't forget to share the wisdom with a friend.